What's up, peoples? Welcome to Carpo's Evening Ramble. I have a couple specific topics in mind for this one, but I call it a ramble because that's what I tend to do. So, I came out to make a video from the bullshit files. That's what I call this file. It's got a variety of different papers that I've been mailed over the years. A couple I found the other day. Planned to make a video about this, church pastors that are making millions of dollars a year, and the poor people who are trying to give to the church, in hopes that they're saved, but all the way up to people selling you scalar energy wands and special quantum fluctuator bracelets and flashlights for thousands of dollars. The list goes on. If I were to name all the charlatans, I would be busy forever. I could make a whole channel based on exposing frauds, but I have no interest in doing that to that extent. To me, I'm happy to just expose a few of them. Because when I was in there cleaning up cat shit a few minutes ago from my kid's room, the cat decided to shit in the corner. She's getting old, and she knows where the litter box is. I don't know if she's being stubborn. The point being that as I was cleaning that up, I had already planned on making this video, and I thought, what a perfect addition. Here I am cleaning up cat shit. Think, there's only a couple things in this world that are really, really bother me. One of them is, of course, cleaning up cat shit, or baby shit, or any other shit. But I've got over that having kids, of course. But really, there's only one thing that really annoys me, and really, I guess, frustrates me, because I'm very accepting of the way the world is. I mean, I've come to terms with many philosophical insights that I could never begin to express here, but that have helped me live a better life, because ultimately that's what I'm after. And by doing these videos and having this channel, one of the things I try to share is my philosophical insights, not egotistically, but in hopes that other people can help their own, we're all living the same life here, people, okay? You and I, we're on the same level. I'm not better than you, you're not better than me, we're all just people. As far as knowing, our purpose and what we're here for and whatnot. So there are a lot of people who take advantage of that and will sell you anything to give you an afterlife, or to give you a hand up in the chakra boost, This whole thing has just taken a turn to where, I would say it's something that's always occurred, but in the modern day, with all the evidence we have to support, that much of this is not proven, there are still people selling thousands of dollars, millions of dollars worth of equipment that's just hopes that you will attain some level of awareness. And I get emails weekly from it's called Shift into the New Paradigm. It's like a 5D website thing I somehow got signed up for, and they send me weekly emails of their seminars. There's a guy named David Sereda, and he's probably got thousands of followers, but he is, one of the biggest scam artists that I've seen out there. But if people are willing to buy his, $4,000 flashlight, it's basically just a mag light that has the top converted with like a piece of paper or something put in there with these rubies and gems that he claims will like adjust your field, or it doesn't matter. There's no evidence to support any of this shit. And when people see these new age devices, they think, wow, it's a bunch of copper wrapped around a pole, and it's got all these little, jewels. It must be worth something. It's metal and jewels. It's not. What you're doing is you're buying a placebo. And in that case, there's nothing wrong with a guy selling wands, magic wands for $10 to say, hey, this will cure, whatnot, and give it the same type of aura cleansing, benefit as the $3,000, $4,000 hand wand. So anyhow, the point being that it's the believer of the individual that makes it work or not work. The reason why this is one of the most irritating things to me, because I've met a lot of annoying people, a lot of thieves, liars, and charlatans, but you might notice I focus on that a lot. And but off subject, but before you mention, yes, my mustache is gone. I had the shaver and I accidentally hit it at the wrong angle and I messed it up. There's no way to repair it, so I'm like, all right, start fresh. Maybe I'll cut the beard off too. So anyhow, what inspired this was that was something that, let me just start by saying caveat emptor. I believe that's how it's pronounced, something like that. It's Latin for buyer beware, right? And that's often the answer that I get when I talk about these things. People are like, well, if people want to spend their money, and I say, I understand that, and I totally agree. But that's why I'm making this video. Not to just expose the liars, but to inform the people that you cannot buy a chakra cleansing or a spiritual boost. It does not work that way. And if you have evidence otherwise, I'd be glad to look at it, because I'm open-minded and I'm always keeping an eye out. The reason I talk about it is because I've been suckered by a lot of these things. I've never bought any chakra crap, but I've tried Kundalini yoga. I've tried a lot of different spiritual, practices and a couple mantras, but nothing my research has shown me that most of this is placebo, and it is what you make it, which to me doesn't take the power away. It empowers me. But it also makes me a little bit shy about talking about it, because I don't want anybody else who is a believer in something to question their own faith. Because honestly, if you have faith in something, I think it's great, as long as it's something that's a positive benefit. Our faith can heal us. Faith healers, it's not about the healer, it's about the individual and whether they're healing themselves and they believe in the faith healer. So the more credibility a person appears to have, seems that the more energy they have, the more power. At least in my experience, there's no real evidence that any type of remote healing really works. I know a couple people who practice Reiki, and I was interested in it until I found out that 100 years ago it was invented by a guy who went to a mountain top for a week or 2 or 3 or whatever, and starved himself basically, and waited for a sign from God, and eventually Reiki was what he came up with. And I thought, these are individual people. It doesn't mean that their experience is discounted, but that many, if not all, of the religions in history were experienced by one person originally. And how much faith do you have in mankind? Well, the way around that is to believe that it's God's son or some perfect being, but I can't do that. But others, if others believe in a God, in religion, however they believe it, I think that's wonderful. The people who are making the most money, they don't really believe. They are great scammers. I'm not going to name the particular ones, the Evangelists, but there was a documentary I was watching. It was like a short thing about mega churches, and how, even the Christian church is asked to give their money, to give a certain amount, 10% back to the church. Say only like 20% of the people actually do, or 25%. But that's still 25% of their people giving 10% of their income to the church on the collection plate. Now, I always figured it was a few bucks here and there, kind of like a tip jar, right? I didn't realize that people were actually giving this much. I knew the Mormon church did that, but so let's just say the church is getting 10% of your income that you've worked for. The idea is, what? To get you closer to God by giving money to the collection plate? And I'm not trying to offend here. What I'm saying is, rethink what really gets you to a higher plane of existence, if there is one. Would it really be giving money? Did Jesus really need cash? And people will tell you so, and I've got a whole, thing in here. The thing is, these smooth-talking, young preachers these days from these mega churches, they make a killing off of people. And this one particular guy, he's building I think he was on the news a bunch. There was a bunch of, some particular news channel ran an article on him and exposed him as saying, well, why do you have the, a 16,000 square foot, or was it 160,000 square foot, like huge mansion, and he was having it built up in the woods. And they said, well, a preacher gets a certain amount. There's a name for, a word for it. It's called tithe or tilth, I think, and they get a certain percentage for their home and for their housing. So they basically abuse that. See, here's the thing. It's not about whether or not a person's making money. It's the fact that they're tax exempt. And this is a huge issue people don't realize. Having tax exempt, properties from the churches for, everywhere is quite a ridiculous thing. I mean, yes, the churches give, but others give too. It's not just a religious thing that, to give money, or to charity. anyhow, I'm getting a little off track here, but I'm trying to expose the fact that many of the preachers out there, really, I don't think they really believe what they're even saying. And many of the mega churches have gone far beyond their means and are spending an exorbitant amount of money. This one preacher who they tried to, expose him, they found out he had a private jet. They looked further and found out he had a fleet of private jets, like supersonic jets. But he wasn't really hiding his jet from his people. He actually left one of his speeches and then did a flyby, hauling ass, to impress his people. And they believe that God wants them to have these things. And the excuse you hear over and over again is, well, if a person is spiritually inclined enough, then God has given them these gifts. The problem is that material gifts don't make the spiritual man or woman. If you receive millions of dollars as gifts from God, and you believe that, are you really going to hoard it for yourself? Or are you going to help the people that you claim and profess to care so much about? And that's just the religious aspect of it. I think the problem is that these people ruin it for the true believers. And there are actually priests and organizations that are out trying to expose these bullshit churches. And a lot of them are bullshit churches. And I don't like to harp on religion, but it's not religion I'm harping on. I've realized this over the years. I'm harping on churches, because churches are not necessary in order to worship. And you don't need a bishop or a priest or, any of that. So the tax-exempt issue is a problem, but the one thing is, if you go to a church, let's say, if you're offended by this video, by the way, I apologize, because that's not my intention. Let's just say, if you do go to a church, ask yourself, how often does money come up in the sermons? How often does the preacher talk about money? And whether it be if the church needs money or Jesus talking about money. And really consider that, because there are good churches out there who aren't interested in money. Not all of them do talk about cash all the time, but so many do, according to what I've read anyway. I don't go to church, and if I did, I'd only go to one church, so how would I know, right? So I am asking all of you in a way. I know I have some Christian subscribers, and I don't want anybody to feel marginalized or like I'm harping or harassing one religion, because I'm not. So my only problem with this is that many of these people, I'm going to open up the bullshit files here, many of these people actually abuse the elderly. And some of these elderly give up their entire life savings to these fake churches. This is beyond regular churches. By the way, I have this thing, it's a Wheel of Wisdom. It's choose your own religion. It's pretty funny. It's got like a couple dozen religions on the outside. You point the arrow to the religion you want, and it has all this info like potential new friends, afterlife promises, drawbacks, perks, accessories, paraphernalia, and description. I don't know, I found it the other day, and the irony is that sorry, not ironic, I used that out of context. So anyhow, in the bullshit files here, and I might do a future series about this. In fact, if anybody's interested in I want to know how much other people really even care about this subject, because I don't, the reason why I want to expose charlatans is because they are abusing people who are desperate. It's often the people who are the most desperate that will spend their last fucking penny to get, some sort of a, belief that where they're going is a great place, that they've bought their way to heaven, whatever it might be. It's nothing new. The church sold indulgences, back in the day, centuries ago. And not only this, but if you don't know, an indulgence, the Catholic Church would sell you basically a piece of paper that says you're free from one sin. You can buy your way out of sins. The church loved that. But after a while, they started giving out indulgences to pardon or forgive people who had already died, or other people, or, it's absurd, but pretty much they're doing the same thing today. The idea is if you give to the church, then you're saved, or that you're at least contributing to maybe a better afterlife. I don't know. And what do the churches need money for? Unless your followers are getting larger, why do you need to profess the word so much? And it goes back to many of them saying, well, it's because, God wants us to spread the word. The thing is, you can spread the word cheaply. You don't need fancy jets and sports cars to spread the word. There's no humility in that, and I don't understand it. But this is where it gets really bad. You place your hand on this Bible. This was sent to me years ago, and this is what inspired me to make this video. And many of you may have heard of this before, but it's addressed to Mann. And I remember, oh yeah, I call myself Mann. I don't know when they sent this, but you know, it could have been 5 to 10 years ago. It's a St. Matthew's church, and since then, of course, the internet has exposed them a million times over. But this, October 2012, so 6 years ago. Mann, a prayer page, and they send you a penny and a little purple piece of cloth, and then it goes on to tell you all about how you put the purple robe under your pillow and you say a prayer, and then you send the prayer back. You send the purple robe back along with your check. They send you the penny and you send them back, you know, a check. My whole point was just to get a couple pennies out of them, and I did, and I never sent them anything, of course, but they say, you know, of course, in the morning, place this faith contact on top of your Prove God sacrificial seed offering of $10 or a double portion faith seed offering of $20, and decree that any burdens be lifted, especially any, in capitals and bold, financial problems to be removed by faith. Return this purple robe of Jesus' biblical point of contact in the morning. It's horribly written. These guys went on for years, and I wrote down some facts and figures, which I don't even think I have anymore, but these guys raked in like $107 million in a several year span, 5, 6, 7 year span. Yeah, $100 million from mostly elderly people who were desperate, because these were purposely marketed to the elderly. And the funny thing is, there's no church. It doesn't exist. There is no St. Matthew's Church. They send you these little seeds of success brochures, and you know, your little prayer. And then it talks about, it has a whole bunch of Jesus quotes that are totally taken out of context. Yeah. It says, what is the Biblical Seed Harvest Plan? It's a Q&A. It's a biblical-based church stewardship program designed to help people spiritually, physically, and financially. How old is it, and when did it start? This blessed seed principle-based program is as old as the Bible, beginning with Genesis in the first book of the Bible. And it goes on to misquote and bullshit, and I won't waste your time with the details. But, you know, in the old days, mailing things in was the way that people did it. And it also came with this stupid little prayer rug that they wanted you to send back so somebody else could use it, and they probably really did just resend them to save money. And I ask myself, is it a scam if the person really believes what they're doing? And in my opinion, it still can be. You know, I don't define scam as religion itself. My buddy and I were actually talking about this yesterday, texting back and forth, and I was defending religion by saying religion isn't a scam, but rather religion has many scammers within it. Just like politics and business aren't a scam, but there are scammers within politics and business. And it's bad enough that religion does it, but there are a whole sect of society that are moving away from religious practice and then just into kind of an open-minded, spiritual type mindset, however you might define it. And they're the ones that get fooled by things like this, the scalar energy device. This is one I printed out years ago from Tom Palladino, who has a scalar energy device. You send him a photograph of yourself, and he puts it on a device and claims he can heal you of any disease, including HIV and herpes, and then he can also assemble, what he said, I think 186 nutrients in the body remotely. If you believe it, does it work? Maybe. I don't know. But I won't go into the details. I've made, I think, a couple videos about this in the past, but this guy's really, you know, it's not catching on that much. But if I can save one person spending money, hard-earned money, you work your ass off for money. And I just want to say that there is no locket you can buy that will block EMF waves. There is no magic helmet that will protect you from the rays of the government. There are no orgone pyramids of resin with a bunch of layered in sawdust and metals that do anything. And honestly, if any person out there who feels offended by that can send me evidence that any of these things work, without just quoting like Wilhelm Reich, which was the guy who came up with orgone energy or started utilizing the idea. He did make an orgone accumulator, or what he called it. Yes, it did seem to help people. Could have been placebo or could have not. Yes, the government came in and harassed him, and the FDA screwed him over and took all of his, work. The question isn't whether in the past people have invented things and been suppressed, just like Tesla. It doesn't matter. It's why aren't people inventing these today, and show me how it works. There's no real evidence. And on YouTube in this modern day, if somebody, for example, had some of these devices they claim, they'd be able to prove how they work. And this is why science isn't the best. A lot of people are opposed to science as if it's the enemy because it disproves what they want to believe. And many times science is very dogmatic, I agree. But the thing is, there's a lot of competition. And every scientist is looking to beat the consensus with evidence to the contrary. And if they can show through enough experience this is true, they'll become, well known. Whereas in the religious world or the spiritual world, I should say just mostly the religious world, if you come up with a new idea of the Bible or a new, hey, this is what they meant, people aren't going to listen to you at all, even if you can prove it's true. But I guess the difference is, within religion, you can't prove anything's true from the past in the books. In science, you can. And that's why I'm not dissing either one, that we, I believe, need both. I hate to say it that way and that bluntly. I mean, it's just how I feel. We need science and religion, but not religion in the context of dogma. Religion in the understanding that we're part of something greater, and that mostly the furthest I'll go in that realm to say religion is to believe and act as if our actions affect others. And it seems like a very simple thing. It does. But that there is a proper way for us to, there's a million directions we could take, but there's a proper way for us to act towards one another. And that until people can learn to have that respect, we'll never go anywhere. And having that respect means not lying to people. It means not being a thief or saying, well, I'm making too much money lying to people now, and even if I don't believe it, I'm going to stick with it. I don't know how I got this in here. This was about, actually, this ended up being about binaural beats. That's one that I actually do believe in. I would say that if you, when it comes to solfeggio, I'm kind of going into just random topics here, but things that I've learned about, that people are selling you these tones that you can listen to on cassette, on CD, on MP3. I love the fact that I said cassette first, just because I remember all the old, sound effect tapes in the 80s. But you listen to these tones, and they're supposed to cure you. You've heard a million of them on YouTube if you're into that. They're supposed to, be these certain tones that are frequencies for relaxation, for study, and everything else. And some of them they claim to cure illnesses. Perhaps that works. Perhaps some of it's placebo. But I really believe in frequencies, not the specific tones that are told are these sacred tones. But also, if you haven't heard of binaural beats, it's basically using those tones and playing a slightly different tone in each ear on headphones. So you'll have, like, say, 40 hertz in one and 45 in the other, or 50 in the other, and they're usually about 10 hertz apart, maybe. And that's may sound some people are like, what the hell are hertz? But if you know what I mean, it's an amazing experience. Somehow it seems to really have an effect. So as for that, that would be one thing I wouldn't consider to be a charlatan move to sell those things. But on the other hand, you're just selling tones, and nobody owns tones. I just have one paper left, I guess, that was in this thing, and I want to see. I haven't read it yet, but I'm gonna read this because it looks like I printed it off of a website. Meg Benedict is somebody, I remember that name. She's supposed to be some spiritual guru. It says, join Ascension Activator and Alchemist, Meg Benedict, with star seeds and light bearers all around the world for the Solar Eclipse Global Activations on Thursday, February 15th at 12 p.m. Pacific Time. The webcast telecast will include timely energetic activations and empowered intentions to accelerate personal and planetary ascension. Meaningless, senseless talk. On Thursday, February 15th, the second cosmic event in 2 weeks arrives in a new moon solar eclipse at 27 degrees Aquarius. The solar eclipse acts like a threshold point for new beginnings, crossing through a doorway to launch your authentic soul's life. It truly is a breakout moment. The Aquarian solar eclipse sextile Uranus provides positive changes to improve your life, increasing greater freedom, personal choice, and well-being. The solar eclipse conjunct Mercury... I'm not even going to read the rest of it. I've made my point. It's nonsense. Actually, my oldest son and I were talking about this the other day, that yes, you can read as much as you want into even star signs and things like that. There seems to be something to it, like a lost knowledge, but there's a lot of BS out there too. You know, anybody who's selling you a Sunday horoscope is likely just making it up out of thin air. It really has no meaning. So that's my opinion. So I'm going to leave it at that because this video is getting way longer than I anticipated to just talk about this. It always does. I just don't want to see people get taken for BS. Everything's in here. Everything's here in your heart. You can do anything, of course, in here too. But between those two organs, you can do a lot. You can find your way through you navigate through this maze of insanity in order to say what is really important. And doing that means that there are going to be uncomfortable moments, and you're not going to be sure about yourself. And no matter what kind of crazy bracelet or quantum necklace you buy, it's not going to help you unless you believe that it's working for you. So if it does, and you are doing that, you know, and you have some, you know, amazing spiritual practice that works for you, I say that's awesome. But just be aware and don't spend money on things that you can't afford, just in the hopes of having a more, I don't know, spiritual outlook on life. That's all. Nor buy these devices that claim to block harmful waves, because most of them are just trying to stop non-ionizing radiation, which isn't, you know, I don't know. We owe it to ourselves to do the research. I'll talk to y'all later. Hope you have a wonderful day. I know my camera starts to like cut off and divide my video into 2 videos if I go too long. Otherwise, I just keep making it. But, talking about this stuff, you know, it's like, what do you say? There's a lot of rip-off artists out there, and they're assholes. I don't appreciate being lied to, and I don't think anybody else does either. And there's a sucker born every minute. And this world really does say, caveat emptor, buyer beware. And if you're foolish enough to buy something for $1,000 you think is going to cure you from any type of depression for the rest of your life, you know, you really have another thing coming, but I guess we all find out. I've spoke to one person who said they spent 10 grand trying to find these spiritual devices that would help them. But then someone sent me an email once that said they spent over $150,000. They were totally embarrassed, and apparently they had a lot of money and they spent that much on these things trying to find the ultimate cure. So, you know, people are getting rich off of others' ignorance, but the people that are getting rich are just as ignorant as all the rest of us. And until they can prove differently, then, you know, I'll continue to call them out as much as possible. Talk to y'all later. Have a wonderful day. Peace.